I'm Dave Anthony. This is Fox News.
Lawrence County depends on WDXE News, on the air since 1951. This is the legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
And it's time for Stan Pierchoski with Bulletproof Estate Planning. Good morning, Stan.
Good morning, Jeff.
It's Friday morning. We made it all the way back.
We are. It seems like it's been a week since I've been here.
Been all week.
Yeah. We're back with Bulletproof Estate Planning like we do every Friday morning from 8 to 9.
Yes, I get a lot of people comment that they listen to us and listen to you, and I say us, it's your show, it's you. But
so well, maybe they're listening to you. Maybe.
Well, and of course we invite the phone calls in, 766-9393, as you always do. But Stan, good to have you.
Yeah, I had a client come in yesterday, and they attended the seminar. And we always ask, or the girls have me ask them, how they heard about the seminar, just to keep track of marketing things. And
right.
She said, you heard me on the radio. And of course, I have a couple of radios. And I said, which one? And they said, over here in Lawrenceburg. And
well,
so
good.
And they said, Friday morning. So we know that there's one out there.
We got one. That's right.
Yeah. Reminds me of an old Robin Williams movie where he wrote a book and the guy goes up to, that was Good Will Hunting, remember that movie? And the guy goes up to him and says, hey, I read your book. And he goes, oh, so you're the one. But anyway.
That's good.
Yeah. So, yeah, everything's good. We're getting excited. My daughter's coming up in about 2 weeks, bringing the grandchildren. Going to be around for several weeks. Going to be longer summer stay, and so we're gearing up for that. And it's going to be fun.
Excellent.
Get to play grandparents for a while.
How's the eye problem?
Coming along. I mean, it seems like it's getting a little better, but it's kind of slow to go. But we'll see.
All right. Well, very good. I see you have your chauffeur with you.
I do. So I'm not really comfortable driving just yet, but I'm getting. I'm going to probably try it here this weekend and practice a little bit on my property to see how.
They drive the lawnmower around for a little bit.
That's right.
Let him mow.
Start off with
That's a great idea.
That's right.
Very, very good.
I wanted to revisit a question you asked me. I don't think it was last week. It might have been, or the week before.
Sure.
And you had mentioned, like of course we don't get, or you and I don't get political on this show. I mean, some of your shows are.
We sure want to.
We sure want to. But you had asked about, the bill that's in Congress and now in the Senate, what they call the One Big Beautiful Bill. And there's been some rhetoric about, attacking the Medicaid or dealing with Medicaid.
Yes.
And I told you I had looked at that. And I skimmed over it. I went back and looked at it because it's 1,116 pages. At least the version that went to the Senate is. There'll be some modifications changes made. So I haven't seen anything they've done yet. But because I wanted to refresh my memory on that and go over it because it really is not at all like it's talked about on the news. I mean, they're talking about it's cutting. I think I saw something yesterday. They were having this gloom and doom stuff about how many people are going to die because of the bill and stuff.
Unreal. It's
exactly the opposite. They actually are adding $184 billion more dollars to Medicaid, but the cuts they're making are cuts I am 100% in favor of. The cuts they're making are if you're an illegal alien and you're getting Medicaid help, that's going to go, and I'm all for that.
Yep.
And if you are illegal alien now, not somebody in this country legally,
right?
But if you're illegal and you're getting, and there's quite a bit. Now I don't know the numbers, but and if they have something where if it's a work-related program, and if you can work, you're required to work X number of hours, and there's a little bit of banter back and forth about what that should be a week. You know what I mean? Whether it should be like 15 or 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week. That's something that they're bouncing back and forth. But if there's people getting Medicare that refuse to work, and they could work. They're eligible for Medicare, but they could actually be gainfully employed. And they're going to cut that out, and I agree with that 100%. I mean, you and I grew up. If anybody listening to me has had a job or has a job, they're going to agree with that because if you can get out there and earn a living, take care of you and your family,
a man or a woman ought to work.
That's right. And it's going to crack down on that. But if you're somewhere in the middle where you can work, but still need some support, there's a work requirement associated with that. And the third category is just simply one that I've always been complaining about, and that is some people are technically not eligible, but they get approved anyway. And now how that happens, I don't know, but there's a lot of that out there. So that's more of an efficiency crackdown on that. They're going to be a little stricter on the rules for the actual eligibility.
Yeah.
you know, it seems like every time I try to get somebody eligible, they say no, and they don't want to spend any more money. And then there's somehow they get some people on the rolls that don't technically qualify, but they get paid. So that's insider stuff. It can only be something like that.
It is a mystery.
Well, it's not well run. Let me put it that way. So, so that's Medicaid in general, and how they, you know, and of course, when Medicaid gets modified like that, right now they're only at the level of looking at the Federal Act.
Yeah.
The Federal Act then is available to the states. So they'll make these changes. And remember I said they were going to give 184 billion more in Medicaid dollars?
Yes.
What they'll do is they'll dangle the $184 million to the states and say, okay, if you remove any illegal aliens that are getting benefits, and if you impose with the work hour requirement, whatever they end up settling on, right?
Right.
And and then revamp your system to the extent that you vet the people that are actually receiving money, make sure that they are actually qualified to receive money. And if you do that, then we will give you a portion of this $184 billion towards your state's Medicaid program. So like in our state, you know, our Medicaid is TennCare. And so, and then the states can opt in or they don't have to opt in. You know what I mean?
Right.
They don't have to do what the feds say, but yeah, they always do because they offer the money if you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's pretty typical. I'm just saying that
That's the way it
it's
works.
just the way it works.
Yeah.
And so those are the things we'll see change, which normal people won't see any change whatsoever on that. But they're not going to like kick anybody off or take away anybody's money that is eligible. And the whole program is a what they call a means-tested program. You have to become eligible for it to get it. And to me, those are the rules. I mean, I welcome that kind of change because when I follow the rules, I feel like I should have an expectation, some sort of expectation of what to expect because of the rules. But if they're not going by the rules and just do whatever they want, now it's kind of catch as catch can. I don't know what to expect from them when we're going through the eligibility process. So anyway, I'm all for that. It's kind of like just an efficiency. That last category was efficiency, and the only way I can see that happening is like this: somebody could become eligible, but every year when you're on TennCare, or just like if you're on benefits like SSI or SSDI, every 12 months you have to do a recertification, which is kind of like a small mini application. Every year it's like, okay, are you still eligible? You know, it's been a year, are you still eligible? And they want to look at a few things, but it's a very abbreviated form versus what you do when you get on it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's the only place I can see where people who continue to get benefits but really aren't eligible anymore is they improve and they really don't satisfy the recertification because they're not really good at doing that every 12 months, and sometimes it lapses a long time. And I've actually had situations where people don't get it for a year or so, and then it comes around in a year. So
Interesting.
stuff like that. And you know, if somebody's financial situation improves, then it's never reported, and they don't know.
That's just a very small example of government inefficiency
Absolutely.
in a department.
It's a small example of a big inefficiency.
Of a big inefficiency. Well, I mean, you put that across the board in all these government programs, and you just see what we get.
Absolutely. So I'm excited about it because I think it's going to help the program.
Right.
The program's going to be more operating like the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
People aren't taking advantage of it, which we don't want, and it's going to help the people it's designed to help. So, you know, you had asked the questions like what was going to be that impact.
Yeah.
That's what I see. But of course, it's still in the Senate, and they have an opportunity to take a crack at it. And then if they do change anything, they got to send it back to the House, and that sort of thing. It goes back and forth.
You know, Stan, you're one of the few people that I know who actually reads the bills.
Well, I think I did say, I did look to see how long it was. It was
Yeah.
1,116 pages. And I glossed through a lot of it, but I looked through the stuff where it talked about Medicare and Medicaid, things that, you know, there was a lot of stuff in there. I looked at a lot of stuff on the immigration too, just because that interests me. And the wall, you know, stuff like
Yes.
that. There was funding for that. But, you know, it was basically all the campaign promises that were in there. And it's one of those bills that has, I think there's something like 12 separate subject matters in there.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it the kind of bill that doesn't have to go with the supermajority of a vote of 60 in the Senate. It just needs a 51.
Needs a majority.
Because it follows a rule which I don't want to bore people with that, but personally I would like to know how that rule works in the Senate. But there's a rule that if the bill fits a certain criteria like that and covers so many different things, that it only requires a simple majority instead of their
Simple
60.
majority.
Their 60. So, you know, it's a big deal. There's a lot of cool things in that bill.
Well, that's part of your world of knowing the rules.
And some people say, is it perfect? No, and it's not. You know, and of course, to get everybody on board, there's certain give and take. You know, because some of them, I've looked at some of the opponents, what their concerns were, and they were kind of valid concerns, but it wasn't so much that take this out or put something
Yeah.
else in, it was more like, I think this went too far and it needs to come back. Or in some places, surprisingly, what you don't hear about on the news, is that in a lot of places, some of the people that are voicing some opposition to it, they don't feel like they cut enough of waste. So that's, and so, which is why if they say, well, you should be cutting more, maybe that's a good idea, you know. But because I'm all for all that waste stuff that they find, you know, that's infuriating to find out where our money's going. Absolutely infuriating.
It is.
And if they're going to cut that out, I mean, I'm all for it. All for it. So we'll see. I think it's probably going to go through. I don't know when. You know, they like to hash it back and forth, and they like to act like it's not going to go, it's not going to go, and then magically one day the vote is there and it's there.
I remember when I found out what a Washington budget cut really meant.
Okay.
Because it's not.
Yeah, probably not.
Well, you know, they said they're cutting the budget on this, that, and the other. They're cutting the budget. What they're doing is they're cutting the amount of increase that was planned. They're raising the budget.
Okay, I got you.
But they're cutting the amount of increase that was planned, and they call that a budget cut.
It's kind of what we used to call ask for the world and settle for half, right?
Yeah. So what they call a budget cut is actually an increase, which is just bizarro world.
Yeah.
But that's what you hear. We're cutting the budget by such and such. They're not.
Why don't they just say it? When you have more respect for it, they just said it.
Yeah.
We wanted to cut it 90%, but the
Yeah.
change is now only cutting 50%. Right? Well, just say it.
Well, it's actually worse than that. It's the budget was going to grow by 100%, but we're going to cut it back, just grow by 50%.
Yeah.
That's really what they're doing.
Yep, I agree.
So,
Anyway, we'll. If you're concerned about that,
Yes.
you know, if you're in 10 care and you're concerned there's going to be effect, there won't be. As a matter of fact, any effect we see, you won't see it on an individual level. We might see it with more people that are eligible getting there, the people that are consuming some of the assets, not consuming as much of them, and the addition of Medicaid money to get us efficient like that. So
Wow.
I welcome it entirely because I know how the system works and it needs some work. And here, what is this, June 6th? So July 30th, I think. Maybe it's the 29th. But July 30th, Medicaid, the federal Medicaid bill will be 65 years old.
Wow.
Or 60 years old. It'll be 60 years old.
60 years
Because
old.
it came out in 1965. So that makes it 60 years old, right? And it's still not well understood.
No?
It's still not well understood. So,
Somewhat intentional, I would think. I don't know.
well, you know when it gets like this, I've talked about this before, and I'll bring it up again because I think it's important because people misunderstand. You got Medicare and you got Medicaid, right? And people confuse them. Well, I can't imagine why. They're only two letters of the alphabet different, and so
Yeah,
how can you
exactly.
possibly confuse those
Yeah.
two things, right? Of course, I jest, but they are extremely different on what they do. You know, Medicare is also a federal program, came out in '65, and it's insurance, and it acts just like insurance. So if you are under 65, you're under 65, right?
Barely.
Okay, but you, I gave you an opportunity to say that.
Thank you.
And so you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? You know, and it's insurance, and you pay a premium.
Yeah.
And if you use it and go to the emergency room or something, you end up paying a deductible,
Yeah.
and they cover the bill or something
Yeah.
like that. So,
Yeah.
and Medicare is just like insurance. So when you turn 65, you get Medicare, and it's the same thing. You pay. Everybody gets Part A, which is the physicians and doctors and stuff, and then you get Part B on a sliding scale based on your income. Okay, and that's like your premiums. And then you have a deductible that you pay. If you go in, you pay a deductible. But it works just like insurance, and it's the same in all 50 states. Everything we know about Medicare here in Tennessee is the same way as it works in Alaska, right? I mean, it's just, there's no difference whatsoever. But Medicaid is different because it's also a federal bill that came out in 1965, but it allows the individual states to have their own Medicaid program. Okay, and they all have a cute little name. Ours is TennCare. Out in California, they call it CalMed, and it's stuff like that. Okay, now when you have that, you know, when people talk to their family members, they live in other states, and say, well, you know, you can do this, and we can't do that here, or you think you may be able to do it here. Or you know, I've had people say, hey, you know, I listened to your seminar or something, and you said we can do this with real estate. Talk to my brother, and he said, you know, or he said they can do it there, but we can't. You know, you said we can't do that. And I'd say, well, where does your brother live? And they'll say, well, he's down in Florida. Now, I'm actually jealous of some of Florida's Medicaid laws. There's some things down there they do I wish we could do, but they're different. the way I describe it is this: if you look at the Medicaid Act, the federal act, think of it as a big bubble. Okay. Inside this bubble are 50 little bubbles, each of the states, right?
Right.
Now, some of the little bubbles can overlap each other, but none of the 50 bubbles can escape the big bubble. So they have these basic framework they must stay within, but they're allowed to modify the rules within their own state. So as a result, you know, when you deal with available assets that people are allowed to have, we have states that are a minimum and maximum state, we call them. We have capped states, and we have range states. And that's how they can have what the stuff they're allowed to have. You know, it can be a range. You can have a minimum and maximum. That's what we are. We're a minimum maximum. You know, we have a minimum amount of what they call the community spouse resource allowance, the money that your spouse is allowed to have. There's a minimum number and there's a maximum number. You know, our minimum is about 46,000. The maximum is about 158,000. And so that's a range that you have to work with. And then there's other states that just have a number, a cap.
Right.
It's capped at this number, so it can be anywhere up to that number. And they all have different income requirements. We are an income cap state where if your income's capped right now at $2,901, if you're over that, you're not eligible. Although if you're over that, it's a simple thing for me to fix to make you eligible.
Yeah.
But technically,
Yes.
it's you're not eligible. And so they all have their own rules, and some states are relatively similar. So their little bubbles might overlap a lot, but none of them overlap completely. They all have some little nuance. Like we are very similar to Kentucky.
Yes.
Okay, and Alabama, we're kind of similar, but not just, you know, there's some noticeable differences there. So things like that. So if you go to a nursing home in another state and you think you're able to do something that I say you can't do here, that's usually the reason.
Yeah.
The rules, you know, the rules
Yeah.
are different.
Yeah.
Now, our rules aren't too bad. I think we're probably in the top 10 for favorable rules, but there are some that I think are better. So. But
Well,
I mean, I
that's
can't
good.
do anything about that. I can't apply Florida
Sure.
rules. So
You have to
sorry.
we have to use the rules that we're given.
Well, we may lobby to get some of those rules here. You
Yeah.
know, something like that. Because those rules are, you know, because you have these waiver programs. Like in TennCare, you have choices level 1, which is, you know,
Yeah.
nursing home and assisted living, or certain nursing home. But assisted living is also a long-term care program, but it's one of our waiver programs. Now it has the exact same eligibility requirement, but they pay for it a little differently. It's kind of annoying the way they do it, but it's different. And it's when they reach out and do something on their own, you know. But again, they cannot exceed the federal guidelines.
Yeah.
But so the guidelines in the federal act are basically general, and so we can be stricter than the federal thing, but we can't be more liberal than it. We can't be less restrictive.
Yes. That you mentioned something just in passing there that made me wonder: is there such a thing as a lobby that addresses these issues?
Well, there can be in the states, but again, they're bound by this thing. You know, suppose an example comes to mind. There was a state. It escapes me, but it caught my interest when I was reading it. I want to say South Dakota, but I'm not sure. And they had their available assets was a capped number.
Yeah.
And they wanted to go to, like we are, which is called a minimum and maximum range, because there's some advantages to that. Meaning, if a spouse, a healthy spouse, the one that's not in care, is below the minimum, we can reroute money to them from the other one to get them up to the minimum. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
The cap number is just whatever you get, but the only requirement is you can't get more than the cap.
Right.
So it really was it hurt people with the lower amount of income because you couldn't direct any from the institutionalized spouse to the healthy spouse, right?
Right.
And they changed. Okay, their legislature changed it. So if you have a legislature, you can have lobbyists.
Yeah.
I don't know. Of course, lobbyists are usually there for kind of a personal interest in a way or something. You know, try to get their bill passed. I don't know.
Right.
I think it was more just so they were looking at the program and thinking it was.
Yeah.
Maybe enough people complained about it, but so I imagine you can certainly have lobbyists in the state to modify that. As long as you stay within the rules, they're allowed to do whatever they want, as long as they don't escape the big bubble.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You know, and that brings up something up, and maybe I want to get on a different topic, but there were 2 states. You know, when you look at the federal act, it says that every state must have a state recovery program, and we have one. And you hear me talk about TennCare State Recovery Act a lot. That's how they go after property after death.
Yes.
And it's pretty ruthless. But every state's required to have a recovery program. There are 2 states that abolished the recovery program, and they claimed they cost them more to run it than they got. The numbers I remember, somebody said it cost, he said, we collect $60 million in state recovery and it costs us $110 million a year to run it. So they lose money. So they abolished it. Now, I thought to myself, I don't think they're gonna be successful with that because the federal act mandates that you have it. It's not an if, it's not a may or a shall, it's not a may or can, it's a shall. Each state shall have a state recovery program.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wanting to follow that, but I haven't heard anything about it lately.
Interesting.
And then back before the election, there was some talk about maybe abolishing the state recovery for everybody. Now, that sounds great, but it's never gonna happen because if the program doesn't get paid for, it's gonna fold, right?
Right.
So they have to have that sort of thing in some way, so.
Well, that brings us back to something we discussed early on, way back, if I remember right, from when we first started talking, is how is this program funded?
You and me.
Yeah, yeah, but when do we fund it? It's not all from the state recovery.
Oh, no.
We're paying for this as we work.
It's an actual deduction to your paycheck.
Yeah, that's the part I wanted to talk about.
It's part of it under the medical,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Now, how that breakdown is, I can promise to look into it and see if I can figure it out, but it is part of that, that's right.
Yeah, well, but that was not known to me until I had these conversations with you. Is I didn't know that we were paying a piece of this from our paychecks
Oh, that's right.
all along.
Now, if you want to extrapolate that, let's say you have somebody that goes into long-term care, and they are over-resourced according to the rules, right?
Yeah.
Well, they have to private pay. So, that doesn't affect anybody else because they're not using taxpayer dollars, they're private paying.
Right.
When you affect taxpayer dollars is when you become eligible for the program, and then the TennCare system pays the bill. Then that payment is done with tax dollars. Now, those tax dollars come from general income tax and deduction for the different things that they deduct for under medical, and they also comes from the federal government gives them money, a certain amount of money, and they collect money through a state recovery. That's how they get funded.
Interesting.
And some states say they just struggle, they just go in the hole with it, which is, a bad place for a program to be. But, I looked at some of Tennessee's number and they managed to recover enough to keep going.
Yeah, I would say.
So, and if you don't, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think if the feds didn't give some of their money, all 50 states would probably be a little bit in the hole. Because the state recovery, it's like take what you can get and move on. And usually, it's not uncommon if somebody would go into the nursing home, TennCare pays their bill for the average 3.6 years, and it's $100,000 or $300,000 over the 3 years.
Yeah.
And then they enact a state recovery, and the person's state has maybe $150,000 in it. Okay, they take that. They don't get everything, but there's nothing else to take, so they take it and move on. So it's often their claim is more than what the estate can support.
Yes.
That happens often.
Happens
And so
often.
that's a net loss each time, right?
Yeah.
So that net loss has to be covered by either the federal money or through the tax dollars that they get. But see, the tax dollars go to the feds and then they dish that money out. So this Tennessee,
That's right.
the state of Tennessee doesn't tax you for that.
Right.
So
I guess
how it changes hand and goes around, I'm sure, if you want to talk about inefficiency, I'm sure there's plenty of that.
there's all the hands it passes through before it actually gets to where it's going.
Yeah, and that's,
it's pretty amazing.
That's a whole another conversation.
That is another conversation. Holy cow.
But it's one of those programs, and the program means well, and
Yeah.
it's a necessary program, but they can screw it up, and often do. And after 60 years, they've done a pretty good job.
Well, to lighten things up even more, I wondered about this as we were talking here. Has the zebra been spotted in Giles County?
All right, now that's you're saying something I'm not recognizing whatsoever.
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
How about you?
You may have to help.
Do you know?
There's apparently a zebra. Is it in Nashville?
In Nashville, a zebra
Yes.
was lost.
Yes.
And it's been all over Facebook. People
Yeah.
have been spotting it, and they're putting him.
Oh, yeah.
Like the first one I saw, he was in Loretta.
Sure.
And then one of the Amish buggies had him hooked up. And the most recent one, and see if I can find it right quick, because Stan, the zebra showed up and is actually sitting in my chair.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
here, he's got a picture.
Yeah, sitting in my chair.
I love it.
In my office. So anyway, I just wondered if he'd shown up at your place.
Zebra spottings are like the old Bigfoot spottings,
Oh my gosh. It's like a
or Elvis sightings.
Elvis sightings. So anyway, to lighten the load a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh my
Cool.
gosh.
Well, you know,
Maybe he'll come to the
the
Sunday.
Amish should hook him to the buggy. If he's gonna escape from the zoo, might as well put him to work, right?
Might as well put him to work.
Earn
That's
your
right.
keep, earn your keep.
Earn your keep. Earn your keep.
But there actually was an escaped zebra though, right?
Yeah, evidently there is.
His name is Ed, right?
Ed, is that really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess you
And I
can't,
don't know if it was the zoo.
I
Have you
guess you
heard
can't-
where he came
I
from?
really, no, in fact, I don't think it was the
It was
zoo.
a pet,
It was a
somebody's
pet
pet.
zebra, yeah.
name is Ed. I guess we can't call him Spot.
No,
Aw.
Let's call something. Okay.
my, you got a seminar coming up?
I do. We had one just in May,
Yes.
and we do them every other month now. And we got one in July the 19th. So I guess that'll be here before we know it, but about a month out. Maybe
Yeah.
a little more than a month. But
Yeah.
hey, it's not too early to start RSVPing for them because we already have some. And it's going to be, 19th is a Saturday. We
Yes.
tend to be doing almost all Saturdays because that's what people want.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going that way. But it's a Saturday one. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. We call it Will's Trust in the Nursing Home, which is what we talk about. And it's at the Star Theater in Pulaski. The last few I had in Pulaski were over at the American Legion. And this time we just happened to have a break in the schedule at Star that
Yeah.
Saturday was available. And we thought we'd mix it up a little bit, but
Yeah.
you can see one from the other on Pulaski. You can see the
There
Legion
you
from
go.
the theater and vice versa. But it's right there on the square. You know, we got good seating now. You know, in the theater, we got the elevated
It's
seating.
a great theater.
The pole's been removed and stuff, so it's a nice, comfortable place to be.
Yeah.
So that's made July the 19th and Saturday. So I'll talk about that on future Friday shows. But if you're interested, like I said, it's not too early to RSVP. And you know, you have heard me before. The RSVP process is very loose. Just call and tell us you're going to come and maybe how many are coming with you for a head count. I often say the girls make light refreshments.
Yeah.
And apparently a cardinal rule is you never run out of refreshments.
That is a rule.
We want to know the head count for that reason, if nothing else, for that reason.
That is a good rule.
So, yeah, I can see where that would be a problem to run out.
That phone number, 363-7222.
Yeah.
And of course, the phone number here.
Yeah, and you can also get on it from the website, estateplanstand.com.
Oh, that's right.
You can actually repeat it that way too, I think.
That's right.
So,
Estate Plan Stan. Catchy name and very good. The phone number here, if you'd like to talk to Stan this morning while we're live, 766-9393 is the number.
and you can, you can ask a question, of course, or you can share an experience.
Yeah.
And those are always cool because, you know, it lets us know what's happening in the community, what people
Yeah.
are dealing with, you know, experience and that sort of thing. So,
Right.
had a person come in that, you know, we do a family vision meeting where we talk about doing trust plans, and had somebody come in just this week, and it's almost one I could use for a testimonial, you know, if I wanted to do that. They sat down and said they had just finished probate for their parents, and it was in another state, but they had just finished it and it had been 5.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I quizzed them a little bit to find out what it was, and there were some decent assets which bring people out, and you know, and there were some a couple of business interests and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
that's definitely unusual to be that long. You hear me complain about probate takes too long. Statistically, it takes too long. 12 to 16 months. That's a long time to have to deal with probate.
Yeah.
This was like
In
more
excess.
than 5 years. So I mean, it's one of those things that if you can avoid probate, in my opinion, it's worth it.
Yes.
A lot of times people will say to me, "What do you think I should do, Mr. Stan? Should I have a will or a trust?"
Yeah.
And the way I start that answer off is I say, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm biased. I'm a big fan of trust because of what they do, how versatile they are, what all they can do for you. They can do so much more than a will. I said, so when you ask me that question, I'm already leaning one direction. You know, very rarely would I say a will is the best thing for you. If somebody comes in and says, you know what, I don't have hardly anything. I got 3 kids. I don't care what they do with it. They can fight over it. I'll be dead. I don't care. I'll tell you, you know what, maybe a will fits you pretty well because you just kind of don't care what your heirs do.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and do a will. If there's any probate to go through, it probably won't be much if you don't have anything. And,
Yeah.
you know, if they want, you don't care if they fight, they will in probate. So go ahead and do that, and that would probably fit for you. But for 99.9% of everybody else,
Yeah.
a will is a much better plan because of what you can do. It's
trust
modifiable
is
at any
better.
time.
Yeah.
I said will, didn't I?
You
A
said
trust plan.
Trust is planned. Yeah.
A trust plan. That's age related there.
Yeah, I understand. I totally get it.
Yeah, a trust plan is much more volatile. It's much more versatile. You can modify it. You can do tons of things that you just cannot do through the probate process. When the court gets involved, it's not so much that they mess it up, but when it gets involved and you have a statutory set of rules that govern it, it's defined, it's less flexible.
Yeah.
And it has to have an end, it can't go on forever, I mean, you gotta have,
Yeah.
it has to terminate at some point in time, so, you know, speaking of going on forever, I mean, nothing in a will or a trust can actually go on forever. We have a rule against perpetuity, so, you know, you can't like say, I'm gonna just, you know, here's my farm, you can't ever sell it, ever, never, never, you know,
Yeah.
in all time.
Yeah.
Can't do that because we have a thing called alienation, which is the right to own and sell and buy and sell property. And if you say you can never sell it ever, ever, that's it. The courts will rule that as an unreasonable restriction on alienation, restraint on it. You've heard the term. And but what we can do is we can make it a pretty long time.
Yeah.
You know, so an example of that is we can say, hey, I'll leave you the property, but I'm gonna leave it to you in trust, and you have all the rights of the property except one. You don't have the right to sell it.
Yeah.
And you don't have the right to sell it for the length and the life of this trust.
Yeah.
Now, in Tennessee, I probably said it before, but I'll let you take a stab at it. How long what's the maximum length of a trust in the state of Tennessee?
Gosh, I do remember you telling me this, but it was a lot.
It's almost perpetuity as far as I'm concerned.
It was like 300?
360 years.
360
Yeah,
years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
surprisingly,
See?
we're not the state with the longest time.
I'm going to be a lawyer soon. I know.
Guess which state has the longest length of a trust?
Ooh, that I don't know.
And how long is it?
I don't know. Don't remember that.
Now, to me, it's not surprising that it's Nevada. They try all kinds of crazy stuff.
Uh-huh.
And the length is 1,000 years.
1,000 years.
No.
Well, bless their little hearts.
Yeah. Anyway, 360 years is quite a few generations, and that's
Yeah.
it's as close to perpetuity as we can get.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm dealing with a case right now where they have a family that they know fight, and they know are greedy, and they you know all the stuff you can think of,
Yeah.
and they know, and they've got an estate. Okay?
Yes.
And they know that it's going to be a nightmare.
Yes.
So what they want to do is do something similar like that, where they don't even distribute the property at death. They want to keep it in trust and distribute the income it makes, because it's enough money to make some income.
Okay.
And they want that to go on for as long as they want. Now, when I say 360 years, some people, you can say how long it's going to be. You just can't say more than that. Some
Yeah.
people say, you know, I don't want to straddle somebody with this property forever. So if they want to sell it after 50 years, you know,
Yeah.
they can sell it. So you can dictate the term. You just can't go over the 360.
Yeah.
And this one's going to be that way too. But they want to get the inheritance, but they want them fighting over it because they will, and they don't want them getting greedy over it because they said they will. And so they want to rule from the grave to some extent, but still provide for them. And the income
Yeah.
it's going to generate will probably be decent. So
From a real estate point of view, sometimes those property restrictions and things like that have been left or that run with the deed, they can be very frustrating.
restrictive covenants.
Restrictive covenants, and then there's such a thing as a reverter clause that I came across, and like, holy cow, this is a mess.
You know, those restrictive covenants, you have to pay attention to the language. They can run with the land,
Yes.
or they can run with the owner.
Yeah.
If they run with the land, they're there
Yeah.
for a long time.
Run with the land or run with
Which
the deed.
means when the new owner buys the property, he gets the covenant,
Yeah.
whether he likes it or not. And which
Yeah.
is something you have to consider when you buy property.
Yeah.
I like an easement, in a way.
Yeah.
It's different than an easement, but the easement comes with it, the covenant comes with it. But some that just run with the owner, at the expiration of that owner owning the property, the covenant goes away.
Yeah.
The most common ones are the ones that runs with the land, like you said, run with the deed.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, I ran into it very recently. Someone wanted to sell some property and they wanted to put some deed restrictions on what could happen with that property for a certain number of years.
was there something like no more than one house per every
Yeah,
20 acres?
no more than
Yeah.
one house for so many acres, and they said that it's
That's pretty
basically
common.
to stop a development.
That's common, and when you sell property, really, what do you?
Well, what they need to understand is whatever they do in that regard affects the value of that property.
Yep. Now, that's usually done. You think of that and you think, well, why would somebody selling the property care? Right? But
Yeah.
usually, let's say I have 100 acres,
Yeah,
and I have another 100 acres right beside me,
yeah,
and I sell the 100 acres right beside me. That would be a reason to say, no more than one house for every 25 acres.
right.
Because I don't want a bunch of houses now right next to me. I still have an interest in the area. But if you were selling the property, moving someplace else, you know what I mean? I don't know why you'd want to put those restrictions on.
Yeah.
But people do.
They do.
And they're hard to work with, because if you ever need to modify them, remove them, or something like that, you have to deal with every anybody that has an ownership interest, and that can be a long, long list of people.
Run into that before, sure
There
have.
was actually something in the newspaper recently where they publish things like estate sales and deed transfers.
Yeah.
And whenever they have the sales for not paying the income tax and stuff, we're not paying property tax, they have the foreclosure sales.
Yeah.
And stuff. There was one in the Giles County paper, they published that, I don't know what to do in Lawrenceburg, but here they published all this stuff. And there was one that was being done, and it was this long, long list of names.
Yeah.
And, and then included in the long list of names were other unknown heirs.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't.
'Cause you
it's just-
couldn't
we're
identify.
trying to- But it had to, every predecessor in title had to be brought up, and
Yeah.
it was just a big deal.
Yeah.
It's hard, those are hard to deal with. But-
Reminds me of this fellow that bought up a lot of, he bought over years buying property, in his neck of the woods, owned a lot of property. And I said something about that, and he said, yeah, I didn't want it all, I just wanted what joined me.
That's right. Sounds like a musician. You ever ask a musician, say, how many guitars do you need? The answer is always, just one more.
Just one more, that's right, just one more.
But we do a lot of that. Earlier we were talking about the Medicaid stuff. We do a lot of that eligibility planning for
Right.
TennCare.
Right.
And when we talk about my asset protection trust,
Yes.
when I talk about the seminar, we title it "Will's Trust in the Nursing Home." When we talk about the nursing home, we're talking about long-term care. And the asset protection trust is actually, it's an eligibility process. We're just doing it way before we need to be eligible.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's a wonderful way to protect property. Big ticket items like the real estate, all the real estate shown, not just your home,
Yeah.
You put it in this trust, and if you can do it ahead of time, it's not even in the equation. If you ever need to go into care, they do, the resource calculations, and it's not even in the calculation. It's
Yeah.
not even in the equation because it's already been removed by putting it in the asset protection trust, which makes it now a
Right.
non-countable asset.
Right.
No longer available for the cost of care. So you can own a lot of property, have a lot of wealth, and still become eligible because that's not even included in that because of the way we structured it with the asset protection trust.
Yes.
But again, that's something you do. That's a pre-planning tool. It's something you do long before you're knocking on the door of going into care, right?
Absolutely.
But then if you do go into care, then we have these crisis planning tools. I label it crisis because you're already there.
Yeah.
And then there's other things we can do if that happens. But at the seminar, we talk a lot about the asset protection trust. That's really the main thrust of that particular seminar. When I say Will's Trust in the Nursing Home, I go over will and trust to give you some understanding because the solution to the solution of how not to go broke in long-term care is a trust. And so I give you a little background on what a trust is if you don't have it.
Sure.
So that then we can talk about the solution to this long-term care problem.
Sure.
And it's just amazing what we can do as far as protecting property.
Well, we've said this many times here, I know you have, the worst thing is to do nothing.
Or to go on the internet and act on what you read on the internet. And I think
Yes.
that's borderline second.
I would say so. I would say so. It's amazing though how many people have not addressed this at all.
Well, I guess they don't know what's out there, I guess. We do the radio show, we do a couple radio shows, we do seminars. I'm doing everything I can to get the word out that there are options for people to do. But you're right, so many folks will come to me and say, I just thought the only thing you can do is just, if you go into long-term care, you just keep paying until you don't have anything left, and then they'll pay for you.
Yeah.
That's certainly a way, just not a very financially sound way to do it. How about an option of get to keep everything and still go into care?
Still have the benefit.
Yeah, and that's what you're required to do. You're not usurping the system. Something like we talked earlier about cutting the waste out of this program.
Right.
You're not usurping the system. It allows you to keep property.
Yes.
That's not me making it up, for crying out loud. We're literally playing in TennCare sandbox when we do this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we can do. We just need to do them.
Right.
First of all, we need to know they're there, and then we need to do them.
Yeah.
So we simply,
Yeah.
it's the TennCare rules that allow you to keep your asset. It's not designed to impoverish you. And so we can utilize the different crisis planning tools that they allow us to use. We can protect a lot of property.
Right.
These asset protection trusts, they know how they work. They came out. Actually, these asset protection trusts have probably been around for more than a century, maybe even two. They actually come out of our old common law trust laws, and but it became very popular in the late '60s after Medicaid came into existence. Okay, that you could use these asset protection trusts because they
Right.
work very well to protect assets. Now, there's other reasons to protect assets, just from creditors and stuff. Well, TennCare is gonna be a creditor
Yes.
someday, if you're going to care, and it's gonna be a big one. Probably the biggest one most people will ever see.
Yeah.
At $10,000 a month, just do the math.
Doesn't take long.
It'll be a big one. And so, it fits very well. It's just, they've become popular, more popular, I think, since the Medicaid program's been in effect, because it's a good fit for it. So, we do a lot of them. We do a lot of them. If you hear me talking about it, and it sounds interesting, or at least if you have an open mind and say, well, maybe there is a solution to this, come to a seminar and listen to it. You don't have to do anything when you get there. I mean,
Sure.
We don't lock the door and make you sign something. We don't put anything in the muffins to make you susceptible to suggestion, right?
A nice morning.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, it'll probably be a hot morning, July the 19th.
Yes.
So the theater's nice and air conditioned. It'll be real comfortable.
Yep.
So, that's what we talk about, the options. There's things you can do. And it's very likely, I don't mean this the way it sounds, but it's very likely you've not ever heard of them before. And if you hadn't heard of them before, then how in the world can you make an informed decision until you know what's there to pick from?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so that's what they're designed to do. If you hear what I have to say, and you look it up and educate yourself on what we talk about, these trusts and stuff, and if you, at the end of the day, you decide, this is just not a good fit for me,
Yeah.
then it's not a good fit for you. That's,
Yeah.
I insist you be part of that decision-making process.
I would, but just out of curiosity, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that it wouldn't be something that most people would want. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine there'd be somebody that says, hey, this is just not a good idea for me.
And that's what my experience is. It's, the people that come to seminar typically engage.
Yeah.
Some don't, but when they don't, it's usually a procrastination thing. Because I can't tell you how many times I get a phone call, or the office gets a phone call, and says, I came to your seminar 3 years ago, and now we want to do it.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the line, they always say, I wish we'd have just done it back then.
Yeah.
Because we'd be 3 years into this thing by now, and
Yeah.
it's that procrastination.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be my point. Even people that I talk to that listen to this and say, I really need to do this. I really need to talk to him.
Even me.
But they procrastinate and don't.
Yep. Well, I often think that procrastination is the lack of understanding,
Yeah.
or the lack of options.
Yeah.
If you go to do something and you don't know exactly how to do it, you don't know the best way to do it, you only know of 1 or 2 ways to do it, and you don't like those very much, you kind of tend not to pull the trigger on the decision, right?
Yeah.
But if you sit down and all the options were presented to you, and you know those are the only ones that are available, and you look through and you see one, I think this was the best one for me, then it's a little easier to go ahead and take that step. So I think that and which is what the seminars are designed to do.
Yeah.
Just give you an idea of what we can do, or what's available to you. You don't have to do it with me, but when we do the seminars, and hope that if you decide to do something, you'll get us to do it, of course. But
Right.
once you know there's an option, then you can compare it to your family dynamics and see if it's a good fit. And like you said, it usually is.
Yes.
That asset protection is a very powerful tool.
It is.
Once you understand how it works, and it's not rocket science either. You just haven't heard it. If you hadn't heard something, you hear something for the first time, it's a little confusing. But
Right.
this is pretty straightforward. By the second time you hear it, it makes pretty much
Absolutely.
sense. And so, it's a powerful, powerful tool. And like I said, it's not not something Stan Pierchoski made up and does. It's tried and true. It's tested. I mean, in perfecting that in my office, I dig into the statutes, I read the court cases, I read cases where somebody did it wrong and the court says this won't work and here's why, and so I don't do that.
Yeah.
Or when the courts say, yeah, this one works fine, we're gonna uphold it, then I will do what that one does,
Yeah.
The rules get refined, they get interpreted through the years, and so we know what works, we know what language has to be in there, and it's all in mine, and they work very good. I mean, they work very well, so it's a really neat program. Really neat tool that we can use. The only thing is, it's something you need. It works best if you do it before somebody's actually in care. And I don't mean right before. I mean
Right.
before that really becomes an issue.
I know that you focus probably at least half your effort, if not more, on the asset protection for the long-term care kind of thing. But even if you never go into long-term care, the trust can be a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea for a couple of reasons. One, which is not most people's concerns, but when I say it's a
Right.
credit protection trust, I'm talking about all creditors.
Yeah.
TennCare is just one.
Right.
Okay, most people don't have to worry about that, but you know, if you got sued, like a car wreck, and somebody says, well, I have insurance. Well, you can get sued above your policy limits.
Yes.
And most people to get lower insurance get lower policy limits, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in a car wreck and somebody's hurt, it's not hard to get over the policy limits, let me tell you. And they can sue you, and now you're exposed whatever's above those limits, right?
Yeah, there's some other benefits to these trusts.
Or if you have rental property. I have people that get this trust just to put their rental property into it. And it's a secondary to them is, oh, you mean after a while it protects me from long-term care? Great. Most people come to it wanting to deal with it for long-term care.
Yes.
Up front.
Yes.
But it can do it. Now, the second thing that's a benefit to it, at death. So let's say you never go into long-term care. You or
Right.
your spouse never do. You just
Yeah.
go away quietly in the night, which is what
Yes.
we all hope for, right?
Yes.
If that happens, now it's a trust like any other trust. And
Yeah.
it still has all those probate avoidance things we talked about, all those terms and conditions you can put on it, on how it goes to your kids, you know, if it needs to go a certain way with controls. It still has all that stuff. Because now, you know, after death, the creditors we're worried about are out of the picture.
Yeah.
This thing deals with lifetime creditors.
Right.
And if you deal with long-term care, it's going to happen while you're alive, and that's what it's designed to prevent.
Yeah.
And so it has other benefits as well. It acts more. It protected your assets, but they were never in jeopardy, right?
Right.
But you know, with long-term care, you don't know, and the statistics are against us. Go ahead and Google this, and you'll find out that 70% of people 65 years or older will go into some form of long-term care.
Yeah.
Now that's
70%.
already working against us. Now here's the scary one. 7 out of 10 people that do go into long-term care will become impoverished within 1 year.
Wow.
You'll get the same statistics I get if you want to Google it and find
Wow.
it. Now, that makes it so, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be in long-term care, right? Nobody in this room knows if they're going to be in care.
No.
But if we do, and the if we do is kind of against us a bit statistically, right?
Yes.
It's not even a 50-50 shot. It's kind of working against us
Yes.
that we're going to be there. If I do, you will destroy you financially. I mean, it will just exhaust your estate.
Yes.
So prudence almost requires you to do it just in case, just for the same reason you have insurance. Now, I'm not a fan of the insurance industry, but I get it. You know, I have plenty of it, and it makes sense in certain circumstances. You know, if
Yeah.
you have that big accident, it'll cripple you financially. So if you do go into long-term care, it's just so catastrophically expensive that prudence demands you do something to protect yourself from that.
Yeah.
Now you can do that with long-term care insurance, but less than 10% of the people have that, because it's, you know, if you wait too long, they won't give it to you, and if you have any health issues, they won't give it to you. You know, it's up to them whether they will insure or not. Or if they do give it to you, the premiums will be so high you really don't want it. But if you get it early, you pay a lot of money for that insurance for a long period of time before you go into care. So this is another way to protect these things. And I think the benefit of just it being in trust, because now at death, it's just like any other trust, and you get all the benefits of being in trust with all the probate avoidance and how you can leave your inheritance.
Yeah. That's amazing, though, to think about. That there's all these other benefits
Yeah.
to having the trust that protect you even from even like in a lawsuit situation or something like that, because once it's in a trust, you don't own it.
Well, that's right. It's for your benefit.
For your benefit.
And you have all this control over it. You can do
You
everything you
control
want.
it.
You can do anything you want with the property. But
And that may scare some people. Say, "Well, you mean I don't own it?"
Yeah.
But you kind of you don't, but you have control over it.
that's
and
what
it's for
gives
your
you
benefit.
that's what gives you the protection.
That gives you the protection. That's
You
interesting.
haven't lost much of anything.
No.
It's a shifting of the way it's owned.
Yes.
You still control it as the
Yeah.
the trustor of the trust. You still have
Right.
infinite control of the property. You can do whatever you want. You can sell it. You can even get at it if you do it a special way. But I mean, you really give up very little, but you do give up some access to it that we talk about. And it's usually not too much for anybody to live with.
It's a remarkable tool that's available to us through the law.
Yeah. You know, a good way to think of it, the protection that a trust can give is like this. If you have a will, and let's say the will says, I give everything I have, I give my house to my kids at my death.
Yeah.
Let's just use the house. Or the money in the bank too. Okay, I'm just leaving this to my child. Well, because it's a testamentary instrument, that contemplates the fact, or that presupposes that you have the house and the money in the bank to give them, right?
Right.
You could pass away and not have that stuff to
Yeah.
give them, right? So what could happen during our lives that could exhaust our estate Because just saying I'm leaving my wife, leaving my kids, it's, you don't walk away from the table thinking, oh great, now they're gonna get it no matter what. I've solved that problem. You have not. If you have it at death, it'll go to them.
Yeah.
You see where I'm
Yeah.
coming from with that? You have to have it at death for it to go to them with a will, because that's a testamentary interest that has no legal significance until you die.
Okay.
But what can happen during life that could take that property from you, so that when you die, it's your will says, hey, I leave my house and my money in the bank to my kids, but lo and behold, they don't have a house or money in the bank anymore.
Yeah.
The state's is insolvent now. Enter this long-term care concern.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lifetime problem and a lifetime creditor. And when that comes in and you have to pay, you know, there's been 3 increases in 2024 alone. The average now is $10,000. It's hard to keep up with.
Oh,
the
yeah.
average.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like $330 a day, you know, and you do the math, it's right, depending on whether it's 30 days or 31 days, it hovers right around $10,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
It's catastrophically expensive. Now, for most people, if you get a calculator out and figure it out, there's an end in sight to the funds.
Right.
So it's only so much water in the well, right?
Right.
And so, you know, it can exhaust the estate. Now the kids get nothing because it had to be consumed during life. So the trust steps in and solves that problem. Now that's the Asset Protection Trust. Its sole purpose is to solve one problem, and that problem is it protects you, the maker of the trust, against your creditors during your lifetime. And that's what laser focuses on, like long-term care.
Wow.
And you know, and then at death, if long-term care was never an issue, or even if it was an issue, it acts like a regular trust, like a revocable trust, where you know it avoids probate. All trusts avoid probate, so it does. Yeah. So it does all. It has all those benefits too, you know. So it's really a powerful tool. I like to do it. It's fun to do it. I like talking about it. And we're down to the last couple.
The last couple of minutes, yeah.
As long as your clock is accurate, so we'll just wrap up here. We got the seminar coming up
Yes.
July the 19th.
Yes.
Which is Saturday. We do those at 10 o'clock, as close to the 10 o'clock hour as we can. We call it Wills, Trust, and a Nursing Home, and that's what we talk about. So if this problem, if you're concerned about this problem, you want to hear that there's an actual solution to this problem. Not according to Joe across the street. Joe's got the inside line. He knows how everything works.
Right.
He'll tell you just got to blow everything and get rid of all your money. And people just don't do that. Come to the seminar before you do that. There is a solution to it. You can RSVP now. Don't wait, because we've already got folks on the list.
Oh yeah.
And so that's, like I said, July 19th at 10 o'clock at the Star Theater.
A great venue.
That's right beside my office. The physical address is 105 North 1st Street, Pulaski. If you're over here in Lawrenceburg, it's a nice drive. So we got that going on. And of course, if you want to talk to me about anything that we talk about on this show, or anything in my wheelhouse of estate planning, you know, always give my office a call at Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law, at 931-363-7222. You can go to my website. Technically, it's PierchoskiEstateLaw.com, but if you want to get there easy, it's just EstatePlanStan.com.
Estate Plan
You can get the phone number to call there. You can send your question by email. You can look at my calendar and see where I'm going to be publicly, and you'll see I'm at the May 19th, July 19th.
July 19th. You know, this year's clicking off pretty fast.
No, I decided to go backward in time instead of forward. So, yeah, by all means, come, hear what we have to say. Bring questions. If you have a question, bring it with you. If you have a question during the seminar, ask it, and we have a Q&A, my favorite part of the seminar, to be honest with you.
Questions answered. And of course, you try to answer a lot of questions here just in our conversation. Estate Plan Stan, everybody. Stan Pierchoski, Pierchoski Estate Law, located on the square there in Pulaski, Tennessee. Not hard to find at all. And right next to the Star Theater, which is going to be having that seminar. We're looking forward to seeing you again next Friday. You got anything?
I didn't leave any.
That's okay.
Real quick, if you can, in 30
Yes,
seconds.
do that.
StarTheater.org. Go there for all of the information we've got going on. We've got Bye Bye Birdie, Steel Magnolias, lots of great shows coming up. Directors camps, kids camps, you name it.
Drop in improv.
Drop in improv. Yeah, Thursday
That's
nights.
the part I want to do.
That is fun.
It is fun.
Drop
Thursday
in improv.
night, 6 o'clock, from 6 to 8.
Just drop in.
$10. Drop in.
Now, what's the website again?
StarTheater.org, and it's STAAR.
Yeah. Stands for
STAAR.
Southern Tennessee Area Arts Repertory. 2 A's.
Very good, very good.
Ah,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
guys.
Hey, we'll see you next
See
week.
you next time.
Fox News, the Dow surging.
Thanks so much. No, that was plenty.
It always runs, fastest hour of mine week, it always runs up on me. I meant to leave for a minute to go over that stuff.
That's okay.